Good afternoon. It's Sunday. So, hi. Friday, I finished my 25th year of teaching. And technically, we still have a couple of days worth of stuff to do. And I have a few little things to wrap up. But mostly, I'm done with year 25. And as I always do each year, as I close out my year, I think about what it means to be a teacher. Do you hear the cat? That's Weasley. You say hi, Weasley. That's Weasley. Okay. Anyway, and with what's been happening in our country of the last little while, with racial things coming to a head, I guess, in our country, and of course, it's not the first time this has happened, but it's fresh and new for now. Hi, Audra. Hi, Dakota. Andrew Parker. Hello. So, I've been really contemplative about some things that I've read and some things that I feel as a teacher. And I teach 8th grade kiddos, and I love them. They're my favorite age of kiddos to teach. I've taught everything from 6th through 12th, but 8th grade really is kind of my sweet spot. Anyway, so I've been thinking about my students, past and present, and many of my students are Facebook friends, and who they are and what they mean to me, and how I love watching what they're doing in their life, at least through social media. And so there was a post that came through, and I read part of the article, but not all of it. I should have read the article, all of it, before I shared it. But it was an article that said that teachers should see color. And then there was a lot of backlash about that post that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King taught us to be colorblind. And I never met Dr. King. And so I never had a conversation with him to sit down and pick his brain about what he really meant about his famous speech about his children being judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And I've taught that speech and other speeches by Dr. King. But I'm not sure that he meant for us to not see color. So let me explain. So I'm going to walk. I'm in my front yard. And I want to show... Sorry about the light. But I see if I can show you this flower. There it is. You see it? It has one stem and 3 heads. I'm going to get in the shade. There you go. It's different. In fact, where it's growing in my garden, it's in a bad place. I have a bunch of Virginia creepers as well, and the Virginia creepers have kind of taken over that part of the garden. But it's that one part of that flower is trying to grow. So let me show you some of its cousins, its friends, its maybe sisters, brothers, if I can get here in the shade. Do you see those? There we go. Back up a little. In the shade. My viewers. Okay. I don't know if you can see it, but they're the bright pink daisy-like flowers with yellow centers, and then I have some paler ones and some whiter ones. They're not true daisies. I don't even know exactly what they are. Maybe some of you guys know what they really are. But in nature, we look at something that's unique, like a 3-headed flower, or I recently saw a post of a 2-headed tortoise, I believe, or a turtle. And we value that, and we think that it's unique and wonderful, and that we need to take care of those things. And we don't find offense in that they're different, or that a color is changing, that something grew differently than expected necessarily, as long as it's not hurting anything else in my garden. And so as I think about that, I have thought about how important it is in my garden that I see the differences in my plants. That I know that my petunias, I can buy a petunia in Wyoming in April or even March maybe, and even put it outside. And even though we'll have some storms, it'll probably be fine because it thrives in the cold. But I can't plant petunias, which are plants native to the tropical regions of this world, until usually around Memorial Day. In Wyoming, we have a rule: you don't plant things until Memorial Day. So when I lived in Utah for 18 years. Our planting season was much earlier. We can't do that here. In fact, I think we're supposed to be close to freezing tonight. And so I've been watching the weather to determine if I need to cover my plants or not. But I know that my roses, I have to prune back and cut off the dead stuff. While other plants I just leave alone. I have, as I said, a bunch of Virginia creeper that I love, but I've never had those before. And last year I learned how they like to do their thing. And I am going to work a little bit better this year about how to prune them back as the season goes on so that they do what I want them to do. And that sounds wrong. Am I trying to make them do what I want them to? I guess, yes, they're plants. But I also respect that that's what they do. And I don't try to change that. I don't try to change them into a Virginia creeper into being a tulip. I don't try to make my zucchini plants work the same way as I do my tomatoes. And I don't want my vegetables to be like my fruit. And then I also have lots of birds in my yard, in my garden, and I don't expect them to be the same. My cat here, we believe he was a stray his whole life until we rescued him from the shelter. And he's very, very different than the cats that we've had that were born in homes and had human love from the beginning. So I want to, I guess, stand up and say that I see color. I see race. I do. I see my students for what they are, and I need to. Because if a kiddo comes to me with a, for example, Hispanic look about him or her, then I need to find out if they are an English language learner. And maybe they are new to our country, or their parents are. And if they are, then I have different responsibilities that I need to do as a teacher. That I need to work with my friend down the hall, my teacher down the hall who speaks Spanish and who teaches Spanish. And when I need to communicate with parents, I need to enlist in his help because I want the parents to understand. I don't want them to assume that they have to understand me because I'm the teacher and they're in America and blah, blah, blah. No. When I have a student who has special needs, who have an IEP or a plan, then I need to be aware of that. I need to be cognizant of that kiddo. And for example, my autistic students, if we're going to have a fire drill or an earthquake drill, we tell them ahead of time, a week ahead if we can, that on this day at this time we're going to have a drill and it's going to change the routine and it's going to be weird and this is what's going to happen. Because if we don't do that, we are not acknowledging who they are and taking care of their own individual needs. But we don't tell the other kiddos because we want them to practice what it's like to be in an emergency situation where they're unprepared and have to just react. For 18 years, I lived, depending on the year and the treaty, I lived on or right next to a Native American Indian reservation. And I hadn't grown up around that. And so I had to learn some things. First of all, I wanted them to see that I was a white lady. Not because I was better than them or because of white privilege, but because the first time that one of my students and their families invited me to a bear dance, I wanted them to look at me and know that I was clueless and didn't know what to do, and I was really, really nervous about offending. But I wanted to be there, and I wanted, because they invited me, and I wanted to learn. I wanted them to see my color. And on that same instance, I learned when I had my native students that if they were very traditional in their hair, for example, and if all of a sudden they had very, very long hairs, boys or girls, that if they came to school with their hair cut very, very short, that they have a loss in their family, and they have cut their hair as a sign of their native pride and respect for that loved one. I also needed to learn and see that if at a parent-teacher conference, if a parent or an elder or an auntie or whoever came with the child, they might not look at me. And instead of taking offense like I would normally in my white culture that I've grown up in the Rocky Mountain West, but I need to understand that was a sign of respect, that they thought I was doing a good job, that they didn't look at me. I had to see that, and I had to understand that. So I grew up in, as I said, I'm in Wyoming, Casper, Wyoming, and in this community, we're white people. There's Hispanics and there's natives and there's blacks people here, but I grew up with my culture and my surroundings being this. And I didn't grow up in a city. I did not grow up where there was racial tension. I did not grow up with that. The Hispanic and Native and black kids were often very popular because they were good at sports and looked up to and respected. And so, I don't know, I grew up with a very, very different way of mindset. And then my 18 years as a teacher was in a town of 3,500 people. And my children that I gave birth to, they grew up in this community with very limited, cultural experiences, and very much a way that the town did things, and much of it was based on a religious aspect. Interesting. But I also know that I know that I don't know. I have never had the experience of if I'm being pulled over by a police officer, that I have to worry if this is my last few moments on earth. Never crossed my mind. In fact, I look at them and smile and grin and joke with them, and because I screwed up or whatever. It doesn't happen often with me, very, very rarely. But when it has, I'm comfortable. Okay-ish, but I'm kind of nervous, of course. But I don't understand that if I was of a different color, if my racial background was different, that my acting all jovial and happy and joking with a police officer could be a sign of aggression. And that would never cross my mind because where I grew up and because of my experiences. So I know that I don't know. And I need my friends and neighbors and colleagues of different racial backgrounds to teach me. I need you to recognize and see my color as a white lady and know that I love people. And I do care what color you are because I respect where you come from. I respect that part of you. And I know that it has shaped who you are. And that because of those cultural backgrounds and those things, you may wear certain clothes or eat different foods on holidays or celebrate different holidays than I do. For those of you who aren't of a certain religious faith, for you, July 24th is just another day. But for others, July 24th is a holiday. And you're like, but why? I don't understand why some people celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday and some do it on Sunday. I don't understand why some kiddos come to school at Lent with their Mark, and I try to be kind and say, hey, you're dirty. And they're like, Doc, it's, ashes for Lent. Don't you understand? Well, yeah, I'm Christian, but I'm not of that kind of Christianity. I know what Lent is, but it's not something I've ever practiced, and so I'm ignorant and I don't understand, and I need you to help me. So I want a student to come to me, and I want them to be able to say, hey, Doc, we have these things because that's who we are. That's what we grew up in. That's what we know. And I want to honor and respect that. I want to honor and respect who you are. And those of European ancestry. So I have 6 main nationalities. I'm a mutt, like almost all of us in America are. And my nationalities, I am Scottish, Irish, Welsh, English, French, and French Canadian through France, and Czechoslovakian. And once upon a time, if I was of Irish descent in New York City, I would have been the outcast and the stupid idiot and whatever, and my family would have been ostracized. Even though I was white, just like everybody else. But my facial characteristics, my accent or whatever would have been very, very obvious then. Now, with all the mixing and all of the marriages and things that have happened in the last couple hundred years, you can't see my Irishness, but you can in my sister. She has red hair and freckles. And I have more of the Mediterranean area of the France and Czech look more than my sister does. But there's only the 2 of us, and we're both biological mother and father, same family, same DNA pretty much. So I just want to say to my students, I've taught in 25 years over 3,000 or 4,000 kids, that I see you, and I always have. I see you for your poverty or for your non-poverty. I see you for your abilities and for your disabilities. I see you for your religious background and respect that. I don't understand it always. But that kiddo who comes to me and says that they cannot do a character analysis on Harry Potter because of their religion. Okay. I don't get that. But okay. If I have a kiddo who comes to me and who tells me that they are going to dress a certain way on a certain day for a certain reason, okay. I have never taught a Muslim student or someone of the Islamic faith or that, but I know that that's very, very possible and likely that I will. I will learn what they need to do for their prayer times. I work with kiddos who can't eat gluten, and I make sure I have rewards and candy that don't have gluten in it. I see you, and I hope you see me. Please help me learn. Please help me know the things that I don't know. I'm going to share another experience that I had once to give you some ideas. So, as I told you, I worked for a long time with good friends, students, families who are Native American or Indian. And I would ask my students, are you an Indian or are you Native American? Or are you Native? What do you want me to call you? Because I don't know. And it would depend on the kiddo. It would depend on the tribal affiliation they had. It would depend on how traditional they were in their family. Most of the kiddos told me that they were either an Indian or a Native. And I asked him why. Why aren't you a Native American? And he goes, because, well, not every Native people are American. Not every person of black descendancy is an African American. So how do we manage that? Well, as a white person, I need you to tell me what you prefer. I don't have any problem with you calling me a white, old, fat, hunky lady. Some other white, old, fat, hunky lady may be offended by that, but I'm not. Okay? Because that's just who I am. I'm very, okay, whatever. I've been called worse. So anyway, I took some trips to Europe, took some students and people to Europe on Europe trips like teachers do. And we were in Inverness, Scotland. One of my very, very favorite places I've been. Anyway, we were in Inverness, wandering around town, and I was hanging out with a Native American student and her mom that day. And there was a group of people. They had a bunch of street performers, and there was a group of people watching this one group. So we stopped, and it was Native dancing in the cool feathers and the outfits and the drums. And they were doing a beautiful job, and we were sitting there watching. And I was listening to my friend and her daughter comment, that's not exactly the way I've ever seen it done before, and they were making comments about that. Anyway, but they were really interested in this, of course, and all of a sudden, in the middle of their performance, one of the guys who was performing stopped, looked at our direction, and he halted the performance. He turned and talked to his performer people, and they then turn around and walk towards us. In the middle of the performance, they just stopped everything and walked towards us, and we're like, hello. And then in their obviously not Scottish English accent, they looked at my friend and they said to her, are you a real Indian from America? Are you a real Native American? And they're like, yeah. Oh my goodness. What an honor and a privilege they said it was for them to meet a real American Indian. And their show that they did, because they were a native from their country, which was somewhere in South America, and I don't remember which one, that people were so fascinated in Scotland, and I guess other areas, about the Native American culture, that they did a show using their native looks and understanding, but then they'd studied and watched movies and videos and read lots of stuff about Native performances and costumes, and were trying to put on a Native American performance because people wouldn't know the difference. And so they were asking my friend and her daughter about if they were doing it right or what they could do differently. And they told them they noticed some things, and they showed them a couple of steps in their dancing or something. And I just sat back as a white lady, watching the beauty of it all unfold. And I was really, really touched by this moment. And I learned a lot about it, about the world and our culture and who we are as humans. So I don't think, well, this is just the world according to Lisa, and I'll probably get a lot of backlash maybe. But I want you to know that I see you, each one of you. I see those who are in pain. I try to see those who are struggling with mental illness. I try to understand, and I can't understand, but I try to be empathetic and do the best I can with my limited knowledge from my experiences to accept you where you are. But that doesn't mean I think that where you are is okay. Had another student of mine who I knew had gone to California and had been inducted in one of the major gangs there. Came back home, and I ran into him on the street, and we were just chatting, and I looked at him with my motherly doc look, and I said, I hear you've been to California. And he said, yeah. And I said, I hear you joined a gang. And he, all of a sudden and this was not a black kid. And yeah, what about it? And I just looked at him and I said, well, I'm disappointed. that you would join a group that delighted in the hurting of other people to show power. And because I knew this kid and known him for many, many years, I felt comfortable saying it, but I saw him. And he looked at me and he kind of got this really sad look on his face. And he said, Miss Taylor, it's the only way that I know to have any respect. And I said, I don't understand it, but I kind of understand it. But I looked at him and called him by name and said, I see the you that is not that. And he smiled and he gave me a big hug and he said, I'm glad somebody does. And I haven't ever seen or heard from him again. So I hope he's okay. But my point today is that I want us to see each other for who we are. We need to work with each other for who we are and where we are. There's a picture going around Facebook right now of, I hate the Walmart shopper things. There's this picture of this lady and she's in a very interesting outfit, not physically appropriate for the American culture, quite revealing, and she's not thin. And people are passing this around Facebook and making all kinds of comments and, oh my gosh, would somebody ever leave their house like that? And I just want people to stop. Maybe that lady was leaving a horrific domestic violence situation. And she was running and she just pulled something on. And she had to go to Walmart because she didn't bring anything with her except her purse. We don't know why she looks like that. Maybe she really has some mental health issues and doesn't understand the cultural taboos that she's breaking. Maybe she doesn't care. It doesn't matter why she's wearing what she's wearing. It doesn't matter because she is a human being. And she deserves to be treated with okayness for who she is. Another experience is we make fun of people who lose their bodily functions. We're all human, but I once I was dealing with some really ucky feminine girl issues that ended up in me having to have surgery. And one day I was at a store and I bled through everything. And I noticed people were looking at me, but finally someone came to me and said, I'm going to walk behind you and we're going to walk to the bathroom. And they told me why. And I'm just going to walk behind you so maybe people can't notice. And they walked behind me to the bathroom. And I didn't have anything with me because it happened suddenly. And so they went with their own money and bought some feminine hygiene products and brought it back to me. And in addition, this person brought back a pair of pants. And got some stretchy sweatpants, guessed my size, and brought them back and paid for them so I could change. They saw me as a human being, not as an idiot to, oh my gosh, don't they look at themselves before they leave? I am so grateful for the good people out there who notice each one of us. All I know in this world right now is that those who are negative and hurtful and racist and prejudiced and awful, they're often just the loudest. But they're the vast minority, but they're just loud. And so it seems like they are more prevalent. I'm standing up, and it's time for those of us who see each other, for us to, in our words and our actions, in our everyday experiences, wherever we are, whether we're in a very urban city with lots of racial diversity, or a little town where there's hardly any diversity at all, Um, we always make fun. There's more cows than people in Wyoming. But we celebrate the differences of those cows. We don't expect them all to be the same. So like the flowers in my garden, I love the one that is struggling to grow where it shouldn't be with the 3 heads. It's faded. It is not as strong and healthy as the other places in my garden. But it is beautiful just for what it is. I hope that we can all see each other for the beauty that we are. We are all God's children, every single one of us. And He loves us for what we are. So anyway, please share. Please spread this around. I just want to share good in the world. And I hope that we can make a difference. Okay, bye everybody.